This is the Morning Cafe, today being the 15th of January, smack right in the middle of January. Hii ndio ile katikati ya Januari.
Very katikati ya Januari. So kula ugali.
Ukasirishe kamati.
Kabisa, weka foundation ya samaki. Good morning. My name is Anne Odide and karibu sana to Morning Cafe. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh yes, my name is Fred Indemuli. Very interesting headlines today. Wanasema things are boiling nicely. Before we get to the headlines, let us tell you who will be here in studio to help us discuss what's big on the dailies and beyond. Dismas Mokua, Arnold Maliba, Josephat Kamanya and Jerika Higa will be in studio for State of the Nation. Do stand by for that conversation. Starting at 6:30. After that, we'll be having this conversation.
A very interesting toxic relationships.
January 15th, munazungumzia toxic relationships.
Tunaanza mwaka una clean slate. So if you're in one, kuja sasa tuko
New Year resolutions.
You know, sometimes mtu ako kwa toxic relationship but hawajui.
Lakini pia sometimes I think the word toxic is a bit misused.
Really?
Ukikataa kurusha feo na mbona wewe ni mtoxic.
Yes, that is toxicity. Girl power.
Even that is toxicity
Yes.
in itself. So we're going to have a huge panel in studio of youngsters here, mainly made up of students and social scientists as well. Very interesting conversation.
We have a counselor as well. Now to help us understand how does it look like, what are the signs.
Toxic relationship.
Toka hapo anakuambia ukai smart. Toxic.
When I'm toxic. All right. So yes, do stand by for that conversation. A quick look at the headlines. Nchi ya wahuni ndio habari kuu kwenye ukurasa wa mbele wa gazeti la Taifa Leo Jumatano ya leo.
Muturi spills the beans.
That is Ali spilled the beans.
Ali spill. Daily Nation wanasema hivyo.
All right. On the People Daily, Muturi ups war on Ruto. Na hii picha ya Muturi, it's on all dailies. You know, ideally, these three gentlemen would have made the big headline, the three nominees for cabinet, because they were vetted yesterday by the National Assembly. But Muturi ni nani?
The Standard pia wako pale, they're so busy today, you see? Pia wako hapo na NIS abductor in chief.
Nauliza, hey, abductor in chief. I like that one.
The Star, Raila now needs just 12 votes to win.
And it's interesting, this is a story we need to be reading because we need to understand, okay, amefikisha wapi na bakisha ngapi. Chances of him actually clinching the seat. Where does he stand? That's only on the Star today, being Wednesday. Grab yourself a copy of the Star. It is independent, fresh and different. But still mention of Muturi. NIS abductions bombshell. I tell you. Who thought that Justin Muturi would be making headlines on January 15th? Yeah.
Amesema, if you don't know what I'm doing, you're in for a rude shock. Business Daily, why Kenya cancelled French contractor for Mau Summit toll road. Do you think they've gone a different route? Ama tumewapigia sana makofi hadi wakaamua kutia maji? No,
but no, it's also a very important story because you know, jam tumetoka, traffic jam ilikuwa as you're going to Nakuru. This is the same road they're talking about. So everybody has been talking about how that road should be widened and made a dual carriageway. But the deal was cancelled from a French firm and taken to a Chinese company. So why was it cancelled? Those are the questions that Business Daily is seeking to answer today. In Uganda, the big headline this morning, defiant stand on the Daily Monitor. Besigye and his aide Obaid Lutale laid down the gauntlet yesterday, refusing to enter a plea in the General Court-Martial while claiming that the arc of history will bend towards injustice if they were compelled to do so. So, Nolizo, are you guilty or not guilty? I said,
not guilty.
Sisemi, I'm not entering any plea. So the story is on pages 2 and 3. Remember that Kizza Besigye was abducted in Kenya, taken back to Uganda, and arraigned before the General Court-Martial. His main lawyer is none other than Martha Karua. Actually, Kizza Besigye was attending Martha Karua's book launch in Nairobi when he was abducted. So she's leading the battery of lawyers representing him at the General Court-Martial. Lakini amesema siwaambii, guilty or not, sisemi.
Yes, so they'll be back on the 3rd of February.
Yes. New Vision.
How security tracked Citibank robbers. Yes, that is a new vision. And police pursues more suspects and probe extends to bank staff. That is on page 8 of the new vision.
So it's been a while in Kenya before we heard of a bank robbery or bank heist. Yeah. In Uganda bado wako hapo.
New details on Besige's co-accused. He was accused of treachery on Monday, so on Sunday. Yes, so we have that as well on New Vision.
There's a picture there of a number of leaders, including Kenya's William Ruto, who are attending the Sustainability Week in Abu Dhabi. Yoweri Museveni is also there, and Nigeria's Tinubu and Paul Kagame. So that's the front page of the New Vision in Uganda. Now, in Tanzania, it gets more interesting. Look at this.
Nairobi's safety concerns cast shadow over city's reputation.
This is a paper not in Kenya. This is a paper in Tanzania, The Citizen. The big headline there is about Nairobi, your city in the sun.
You're doing badly.
Abductions. Nairobi's safety concerns cast shadow over city's reputation. They say Kenya, once renowned for its welcoming atmosphere towards foreigners, is now grappling with a rise in security concerns, including recent abductions of both locals and foreigners. When did you ever see a Kenyan paper talking about Kampala or Dar es Salaam? They even have a map of Nairobi on the front page of The Citizen in Tanzania. And even KICC wameweka pale. Bana, wamekuja sana hata.
We are doing badly.
Acha. Now there are pictures there of Kizza Besigye, the one facing a trial in Uganda, who was abducted in Nairobi, and then this journalist from Tanzania who had been abducted in Nairobi, then later released.
Yeah, Maria.
This should worry a lot of Kenyans, that your city is actually the subject of a big headline like this in a foreign country.
We are trending for wrong reason.
Yes, you're trending for a wrong reason. Meanwhile, even the stories that should be making big headlines in Tanzania have been relegated to the bottom strip here. Chadema leadership crisis fueled by top leaders' selfishness, Lema claims, and they continue talking about the crisis within the opposition party Chadema. Wanang'ang'ania nani atakuwa mkubwa, ni nani atakuwa, you know, because ukiwa mkubwa alafu mambo yende vizuri, you might just be the president.
Na elections inakaribia.
It's general election here. Tanzania and Japan signed 354.5 billion shilling loan for agriculture. Usistuke sana. This is Tanzanian money. Ukicalculate we change into Kenya, hata watashtuka.
No, but Tanzania is doing really well, agriculture-wise.
TMA warns of strong winds and high waves, and we'll be looking at the weather, but this is a Tanzanian meteorological agency. It's warning of strong winds and high waves, especially for those living along the coast. So that's The Citizen.
This is Mwananchi. They say Handeni Kunani, ajali zaua watu 30 ndani ya siku 20. Hii tuliangazia on Monday, right? Or was it last week? There was this road that has killed so many people in Tanzania. Or was it in Uganda?
That was in Uganda. Now this is Tanzania.
Yes. And then we see more of politics here. Lema afyatuka kiini cha tatizo. Afichua jinsi mipango ya kupanga safu ya uongozi Chadema ilivyowagawa mzozo wa mchungaji Msigwa. Sakata lakina is it Mdee or Mdii? Atangaza kumuunga mkono Lissu akimtaka Mbowe ajiondoe asingoje sanduku la kura.
Kinasoma hapo na feel kama umesoma the whole story.
Was it kamusi yote?
Pale juu on the top strip of this paper, the Mwananchi anasema Kenya sehemu salama hatari kwa wageni. Iko pale juu kwa gazeti hili la Mwananchi, meaning that whatever is happening in Kenya is big news in Tanzania as well. So yes, there's a reason why we take a look at the regional papers just to see, okay, what could they be thinking about us right now? And as it is, Tanzanians don't have very nice things to say about us.
Yeah.
So let's come back home and take a look at the weather situation, and this one at least paints a picture of the entire continent of Africa. A lot of cloud cover in most parts of the continent, some rainfall, and nasema hapa rainfall ni a bit huku mahali unaona cloud cover here gray. There'll be chances of rain as they move towards blue, and then moderate is about purple, and yellow is heavy. The entire continent, not much rainfall to be recorded apart from this area along the coast between Mozambique and Madagascar. Yes, that's where a lot of rain, this is heavy rainfall is expected in that area. For the rest of the continent, nothing much to be reported in as far as rainfall is concerned, and especially around Kenya, hakuna maneno mingi. So let's come back home and take a look at how the weather is. A bit of cloud cover. We start off in Nyahururu, 11 degrees Celsius as we speak, feels like 9. Angalia hapa, kuna jua leo. Cloud cover from morning till evening. They won't see the sun in Nyahururu.
This is a beautiful weather though, to sleep.
Highs of 22 degrees Celsius. Huko kuna baridi.
Yeah.
Ni Januari. Kati ya Januari.
Kisii, mkoaje kule? 14 degrees, feels like it. Highs of 28 degrees. Hakuna jua bado?
Cloud cover throughout the day. So ni ukweli, kuna a lot of cloud cover. Let's take a look at Embu. And you know why we're taking a look at Embu? Because Justin Muturi comes from Embu. And he's in all the dailies today. 16 degrees Celsius as we speak. Wataona jua saa 3 kidogo hivi. Jua litachomoza mwendo wa saa 3. Baadaye, cloud cover all the way up until late evening. That's around 5-6 p.m. A bit of sunlight there. Highs of 26 degrees, but mostly cloudy for the better part of the day. Hata ukienda Kisumu,
16 degrees?
No, bado haijafika.
Oh, hapo ni Embu bado.
Imepotea.
All right.
Tumeangalia Kisii?
Kisii bado. Let's take a look at Kisii. 14 degrees. Cloud cover throughout. Highs of 27 degrees. Lows of 14.
Okay.
Yes.
So Kisii ni kama imekataa, acha tuangalie Kisumu imekataa, acha tuangalie Nairobi. 15 degrees Celsius as we speak. Also mostly cloudy until later in the evening at around 6 p.m. utaona jua kidogo, but cloud cover, a bit of precipitation, especially around mid-morning. Whether or not you'll feel it, we're still not sure. Highs of 24 degrees Celsius. So this is a weather situation in Nairobi.
Yeah.
Tuangazie masuala ya traffic hapa Nairobi, tuone kama watu wameamuka.
It's Wednesday, mnaenda kazi ama mnalala?
Na ni blank. Sasa hapa inamaanisha barabara ndio inachomoza. Jua la chomoza. So yes, so this is a situation. This is a situation as at what time is it? It's 10 minutes past the hour. Nothing much to report. Both Thika Road and Kiambu Road are looking good, and even once they get to the Pangani interchange, as it is right now, not much movement. So iko sawa tu, hiyo si mbaya sana.
Yeah, perfect time kwenda kazi.
Saa hii ndio mzuri ya kutoka nyumbani. Juja Road building up around Moi Air Base as you get closer to that junction, that Eastleigh junction. Both sides of the road are getting a bit busy there, but nothing much out of the ordinary. Jogoo Road looking busy towards the City Stadium roundabout. A bit of red stretch up opposite Shauri Moyo. Hapo kuna a bit of traffic. There's also traffic around St. Stephen's Jogoo Road up next to the church on Likoni Road. There's a stretch of red there, and I'm wondering what the problem is, because this one is towards Jogoo Road, just before the roundabout. On the other side, Mbotela, Makadara area, patches of red heading towards this roundabout with Likoni Road. So Jogoo Road imeanza kuamka mapema sasa. Yes. A bit of traffic there. Enterprise Road not looking bad. Mombasa Road, both the expressway and the road underneath, not looking bad towards town. Southern Bypass, it's green all the way. It's a road you can use if you want to escape the traffic in the city. Langata Road looking good all the way down to Nyayo Stadium. Mbagathi Way 2 is a road you can use at this time. Ngong Road looking fine this morning. And finally, Waiyaki Way is also looking good towards town. Nothing much to report there. Just a moment. Yes, indeed, nothing much to report in as far as Waiyaki Way is concerned. So we'll be back to take a look at the local dailies, but first let's take a look at the quote of the day.
The only thing we have to fear is fear itself.
Just a reminder that Kenya is also making headlines in Tanzanian papers. Kenya sehemu salama hatari kwa wageni. wanauliza hivyo, ni swali pale kwenye ukurasa wa mbele wa Mwananchi. But on the Citizen, it is the biggest story there on the front page. Nairobi safety concerns cast shadow of a city's reputation. Let's go back to take a look at just how bad the situation is in Kenya. Nchi ya wahuni ndio habari kuu kwenye ukurasa wa mbele wa gazeti la Taifa Leo. Sio mimi nimesema, unaweza sema mimi ndio negative. Sio mimi. Magazeti yenyu ndio haya. Na wanasema ni nchi ya wahuni. Wahuni ni nani? Wa Kenya.
Sisi sote.
Sema Kenya imebadilika kuwa nchi ya magenge ya wahuni wanaovamia, kuteka na kuua wakazi na kuwafanya raia kuchukua sheria mikononi, ikiwa ni pamoja na kuvamia vituo vya polisi kuadhibu washukiwa. So hii habari inakubaliana na vile wanasema Tanzania. Safety concerns. Wamekubali tu. So si ati tunakataa.
And you know watu wanachukua sheria mikononi mwao. You saw, I think in Nakuru, even here in Nairobi, when Maria was being abducted, you saw that bus that was trying to kuficha hiyo no isipite pale. And it happened yesterday in Nakuru.
Yes. And we have had situations in Murang'a and in Kericho where people have actually broken into police stations and gotten suspects and meted out what they call mob justice. Why? Because there appears to be a feeling that even the judiciary is not serving justice as it should. So there's a very little confidence in the executive, parliament tulisahau, and now in the judiciary tunasema if at all the judge can order the police IG to show up na anasema skuji, then raia wahisi mfumo wa sheria hauwajibiki na sasa wajigeuza waendesha mashtaka, mashahidi na hakimu, which is a very, very serious and very disturbing trend because that leads to anarchy. That's the big story there. Habari kuu pale kwenye ukurasa wa mbele wa Taifa Leo wanasema nchi ya wahuni. Kwingineko vidokezo zaidi hapa wanasema Kagwe atuliza hofu kuhusu chanjo tata. Waziri mteule wa kilimo na ustawi wa mifugo asema chanjo hiyo si lazima kwa wote. And probably that's the kind of explanation that people needed.
Yes, we don't have to worry.
Okay, it had to come from Mutahi Kagwe. Ule mwenye alikuwa hapo angefikiria tu aambie by the way si kitu ya lazima. Then that debate dies. He just made one statement and that's it. Same kind of statement he made. If you treat this virus normally, it will treat you abnormally. And I'll never forget that. Raia wana imani zaidi na wahubiri. Ati hali hiyo kulingana na utafiti imechangiwa na ufisadi, ahadi hewa na kutowajibika. Alafu kidokezo zaidi pale chini masuala ya dini anasema mashoga sasa kuwa makasisi.
Catholic, jamani tuna mambo.
Mwongozo utakaoruhusu wanaume mashoga kuwa mapadri mradi wasijamiane.
Next we will see nuns and
it is a very dicey area to go into.
Yes.
Okay, let's not.
Ni Taifa Leo.
Ni katika gazeti hili la Taifa Leo. Pale juu kidokezo zaidi, maovu ya Mungiki andama Maina Njenga Mlima Kenya. Aliyekuwa kiongozi wa genge la Mungiki Maina Njenga andamo na maovu ya kundi hilo Mlima Kenya. Watu wanasema the re-emergence of the dreaded Mungiki sect. Daily Nation.
Muturi spills the beans. That's the top story in the Daily Nation.
Hii hata siku spili alitupa hata sufuria akaipiga teke.
Alimwaga mtama akapea kuku wa kule. And Public Service Cabinet Secretary Justin Muturi yesterday took the abductions nightmare right to President William Ruto's and National Intelligence Service's doorstep, alleging that NIS abducted his son in June and only released him after a call by the head of state at his insistence. That story is on page 4 of the Daily Nation. And he says, I had the president ask Nordin Haji if he was holding my son. Nordin confirmed that indeed he was holding my son, and the president instructed him to release Leslie immediately.
And you know, the interesting thing is that he says in that same statement that he had tried to text the president. The president didn't see the text. Then he just saw the presidential choppers crossing towards State House. Then he figured out, that must be the president. So he drove himself to State House. And that's where he got the president to actually call the director NIS to release his son.
Alileta hadi fundi wa mitambo.
Question is, how many people or how many parents have that kind of liberty? that they can actually approach the president and force him to make or not force him or urge him to make a call to the NIS for their children to be released once abducted.
Yeah.
So this is a CS in the cabinet, very senior ranking CS. Back then he was the Attorney General. Yes. Wewe mtoto wako akiabductiwa na wewe si Attorney General, wewe si CS. Hata ukiona chopa za rais zikipita utaenda wapi? Sinikulia tu utalia. It's a very disturbing story there on the front page of the Daily Nation.
All right, we have matters education as well. TSC to deploy primary teachers to join high. Hapo kumekuwa na shida sana. There are no teachers, there are no classrooms. There's no capitation. So the Teacher Service Commission, TSC, has started the process of deploying thousands of teachers to teach in junior schools amid shortages facing public institutions. Now, TSC has also invited applications for the deployment of primary school teachers to teach in junior high, saying those qualified will be upgraded.
All right. They've also done a ranking of counties on the front page of the Daily Nation. Some of the best and worst counties. So top performing counties, fastest growing. The top 10 are Marsabit, Tana River, Nakuru, Kajiado, Nairobi, Isiolo, Lamu, Samburu, Turkana, and Uasin Gishu. Is your county among those? Kama hamna, angalia hiyo listi nyingine. Bottom 10, slowest growing counties. Embu, Elgeyo Marakwet, Nyamira, Bungoma, Kisii, Garissa, Nyandarua, Migori, Vihiga, and Bomet. Where does your county lie? Yes. Very, very interesting. At least my home county and the county where I currently am working at, they're featuring on the top 10.
Hakuna bwana.
Wewe yako iko wapi? Na itafuta si.
Kisumu tuko top 10.
Top 10 huko bottom 10. Sioni seme hapa na Kisumu anywhere.
Vihiga is in bottom 10, friend.
So the full list is on page 12 and 13 of the Daily Nation. Is your county performing, or is it among the slowest in terms of growth? You can check it out there. Because you need to be with it and understand, is your county governor doing you justice? Yes.
Sports. Can you see it there? 2024 Chandro tonight. Kenya to know group rivals in 19-nation tourney. This will be happening in August, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Whether or not we'll be able to host it remains a puzzle. All right, that's the Daily Nation. People Daily wanasema Muturi ups war on Ruto. This fallout in a clear sign of a man laying ground for his imminent exit from government. Furious cabinet secretary implicates spy chief in the abduction of his son during the Gen Z protests and paints president and his lieutenants as players in a grand conspiracy. Stories on page 4. It is the same story that is a big headline on the front page of the Daily Nation. And yes, these three gentlemen should have been the ones making headlines. Ruto speaks for cabinet. That's Mutahi Kagwe, William Kafogo, and Lee Kinyanjui. Nasema Ruto speaks face bunge laundry. Sasa hiyo hajasema poa because wanamaanisha bunge kazi yao ni kusanitize tu, ni kuosha tu, hakuna kazi ingine. And a very interesting headline here. Modern Family. Mothers now bleach dark-skinned baby girls. Wow.
Aje sasa.
Hii story iko kwa page 17 of this paper. Wazazi wanaangalia mtoto wao wasema huyu lazima tuongeze rangi. I tell you. This is 2025.
Yeah, you see these photos down here. Those implicated. You have President William Ruto, Deputy President Kithure Kindiki, who at that time was the Interior Cabinet Secretary.
Oh.
And
I thought you wanted to suggest that they should be bleaching their skin.
No, they are implicated. Not just in Muturi over the cases of abductions.
Yes.
And we have Nordin Haji Pale, we have DCI boss Amin, and we have Raymond Omolo as well.
Yes. So it would appear, according to the statement by CS Muturi, that NIS Director General Nordin Haji is a chief abductor.
Yeah.
And that's the question being asked on the front page of the Standard. NIS abductor in chief, because according to CS Muturi, that's exactly what's happening. CS Muturi says his calls to Nordin Haji went unanswered. Later, Muturi claims he overheard the NIS boss confirming to the president that they were indeed holding his son and would release him within the hour. So Nordin Haji, is he the abductor in chief? Yes, hapo ndio swali. Cabinet vetting trio on the spot. Chan draw on honors fiesta to be held in August. IBC a time bomb, warn lawyers. Now this is a story that probably we should focus on. The LSK president, this story is on page 8. The LSK president says, tonight we are tinkering on a crisis. Can we afford to risk the stability of our nation by delaying this crucial process any longer? The answer is a resounding no, and we must reconstitute IEBC. That is Faith Odhiambo, LSK president, saying that. All right. Joey pia amerudi kwa magazeti. Monica Kimani and the Joey families clash in court over key evidence in murder case. Remember that he actually appealed that case. And for the appeal to continue, we are seeing this push and pull. And your friend, he is here. Kadila, Cairo, on page 9 of the Standard.
My friend.
Set free on 2 million shilling bail over fraud charges.
Yeah, Cairo is going through a lot at the moment. No, let's pray for that young man.
We pray for him.
Yes.
Ni God mazi.
Ni God.
Yeah. On the back page of the Standard, Matter Sports, CAF postpones eagerly awaited 2024 CHAN to August. Tournament rescheduled because facilities were not ready. Kenya was to host. The cancellations came barely hours before the draw in Nairobi. So after months of speculation, the Confederation of African Football, CAF, has finally postponed the delayed 2024 African Nations Championships CHAN from February to August 2025 due to the hosting nations and preparedness. The tournament involving local-based players to be co-hosted by Kenya, Uganda and Tanzania was supposed to be held next month. That's February, between February 11th and 28th. So sasa wamesema haiwezekani, tutaibidi tungoje Agosti. Wengineko wanasema no Jesus as Arsenal host rival Spurs. Wanasema Jesus, lakini ni Jesus tu. No Jesus as Arsenal host rival Spurs. This is just as far as the sports are concerned. And that's the Standard today. Tuangalie the Star. You have the physical copy.
The Star AUC, Raila now needs just 12 votes to win the AUC position. And I think right now he has 21 countries. The Star wanasema he only needs 12 more. Na hizo 21, the nations that have agreed to back him are Mauritius, Togo, Equatorial Guinea, Gambia, Senegal, DRC, Tanzania, Uganda, Rwanda, Zambia. Ziko mingi hapo, you know. Now they say there are 3 new leaders following the recent elections, and it's important that Raila visits them, congratulates them.
Newly elected leaders, yes.
Hears from them about the expectations of the AUC and shares with them his vision and priorities.
Yes.
That story is on pages 4 and 5 of the Star.
All right.
Another big story there is Muturi again. Muturi NIS abductions bombshell. Now, standing outside the pavilion, I had the president ask Nordin Haji if he was holding my son, and Nordin confirmed that indeed he was holding my son, and the president instructed him to release Leslie immediately. And you know, people are asking, Fred, 7 months later, why?
Well, I don't mind knowing the truth. Why he's doing it now, that's his problem. Yeah, the fact that it's truth, truth has no expiry date.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ashatuambia he knows what he's doing.
Yes, even if we wait till 10 years, till after 10 years, the truth will still be the truth.
Yes.
So questions on why he's doing it now, not 7 months ago, I don't think are relevant. All right, that's the Star today. Finally, matters business. Let's take a look at the Business Daily. They say why Kenya cancelled French contract for Mau Summit toll road. Treasury disclosures show the contractors demanded billions in service fees, and 150 billion shillings project is now dangled to Chinese investors after fallout with the French. So listen to this. A demand for multi-billion shilling service fee over 13 years prompted the Kenyan government to cancel a deal with a consortium of French contractors for the construction of the Nairobi-Nakuru Mau Summit toll road. But this is a deal that's very similar to what we're being told about the Adani Airport deal, because them, they were to actually collect money for about 30 years.
Yeah.
So this is 13 years, yeah? Service fees. Okay. Treasury disclosures show the payouts to the contractors would have been financed by additional borrowing, which was deemed untenable by the government given the tight public finances. Yes, so hii barabara ingekuwa ishaanza jengwa, lakini sasa wamesema waliitisha pesa mingi over a period of 13 years, so hiyo watangojea. So Chinese, let's say, and hope that something will happen. So banks pump additional 135 billion shillings to lift Nairobi's economy. That's another story there on the front page. Yesterday, many people did not talk about the fuel prices. So fuel prices have risen for the first time in 15 months.
Yeah.
Diesel prices have increased by 2 shillings per litre for the first time in over a year, in what looks set to hit motorists and raise the cost of living. That's another highlight that many people are not talking about today. Yeah. Yesterday being the 14th of the month, the EPRA must have released the new prices for petroleum and diesel.
Yep.
Livestock vegetable farmers to reap big in Kenya UAE deal. Livestock and vegetable farmers expected to be among the biggest beneficiaries of what we call the Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement between Kenya and UAE. Tuskys assets face auction of a DTB 320 million shillings loan. Tuskys zilifunga zote ama bado ziko. Kwengineko, treasury bills share of domestic debt increases to 14%. These are just some of the local business-oriented headlines this morning as captured by the Business Daily. Remember, kule Tanzania, Nairobi's safety concerns cast shadow over city's reputation. Alafu kwenye Mwananchi wanasema Kenya sehemu salama, hatari kwa wageni, wanauliza swali. Let's take a look at the cartoons.
We see the East African community. We see President William Ruto here. We see Samia Suluhu and Yoweri Museveni. And our president is holding the phone. Selfie pale wanasema pamoja tuangamize upinzani.
So he's a leader in this because he's the one holding the phone.
Yes.
You remember this chant of pamoja, and I think it was President Mwai Kibaki. He recorded an anti-HIV ad at State House with so many different people, and the chant was pamoja tuangamize ukimwi. So that's the same thing they're doing now.
Yes.
Pamoja tuangamize upinzani. Ati wanaitwa hapa, the commentator saying wanaitwa Eastern Abductors Community. So it's something wamekubaliana wafanye. No wonder all three of them were actually placed, or their caricatures were actually placed in boxes. Let me call them boxes.
Yes.
But they were not very happy.
Yeah.
That's a cartoon on the Standard today. The cartoon on the Star has a lot of sheep. There are a lot of white sheep, and there's a black sheep here. So the black sheep here is a CS for public service. Now that he has raised concerns about the abductions, the abduction of his son, and he has pointed out to a few people and said this and this, he's now seen as a black sheep of the cabinet. But there are other black sheep within the white sheep. Hatujui identity yao, but kuna wengine apparently pia are not very happy. So there could be some black sheep also, more black sheep emerging from the cabinet.
Huyo kwa nini anakaa Kipchumba?
Huyu ni white sheep wa cabinet, Kipchumba. Na huyu ni ule deputy speaker, hata si cabinet. Na huyu ni Joho pale. Hata Sudi namuona ni white sheep upande huu. All right.
Welcome to Kenya. This is People Daily?
Yes, People Daily has a plane at the airport there, and someone descending or disembarking from a plane coming down the steps.
Foreign Airways. Alafu
anapata anaitwa Foreigners Airways. Anapata red carpet, but this red carpet leads straight to a hole where abductions. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
Tanzanians are asking, is Nairobi still safe for foreigners? Is the cartoon on the People Daily agrees that this is not probably the best place for you as a foreigner. Ukikuja ndio tutakukaribisha na to lay the red carpet, but hapo mbele you'll be abducted. Welcome to Kenya. Nasema Eastern Abductors Community.
Now,
Daily Nation.
Term limits relay. That is President William Ruto?
No. This is Kapseret MP.
This?
I can't see that clearly. But this is Kapseret MP Oscar Sudi, and he's handing the baton to the Kamket, another MP from Baringo. And hapa mbele kuna ule jamaa aliongea vibaya sana anaitwa Farah Maalim. Pia wote wanasaidiana kusema term limits, atakaa 24 years, atakaa mpaka Jesus comes back, there's nothing like a one-term president. That relay. Wanaendelea na hiyo maneno yao. Yes. Meanwhile, hatujafika even halfway the first term. The halfway line will cross it in March of this year. So these are just some of the main discussion points we're going to be having with my panelists today. Remember the safety of foreigners in Nairobi, a big discussion point, and now the link linking of the NIS Director General by the CS for Public Service as the main abductor-in-chief, the biggest discussion. Dismas Mukwa, political risk analyst, will be in studio alongside Arnold Maliba, public policy analyst, political analyst Josephat Kamanya, and Njeri Higa, national youth leader. They'll be in studio for this conversation, so do stand by for that after the break. Later on, very interesting conversation.
Toxic relationships. Are you in one? Kuja tukwambie leo.
I think every man has been told when I'm toxic. Kama hujaambiwa when I'm toxic, by the way, you're yet to make it.
Kama when I'm toxic, when I'm toxic. No sugar coating.
So this is a panel that's going to be in studio, and then we'll also have a councillor, Dr. Julius Kimani. That is coming up later at around 8 a.m. You don't want to miss that.
So interact with us on our social media platforms, TV47 Kenya on Facebook and YouTube, on X at TV47 News KE. My handle is _Odida on X.
Mine on X is at Fred Indimuli. You're watching Morning Cafe.
Are you ready to elevate your business game?
As long as you're earning something, there's always that opportunity to save. And you start with where you are.
Kama wewe ni mfanyabiashara, huwezi kaa bure, unajipanga taratibu vile inavyofaa.
Join us each week as we dive into the stories of the world's most driven entrepreneurs.
When you pay attention to detail, you get luxury items.
The Grind, where business meets brilliance. Tune in every Monday at 7:30 p.m. because your business deserves the best.
Hey there friends, welcome to Kids on the Block, where fun and imagination come alive. We dive into magical world filled with exciting adventures and awesome friends.
What position were you in?
I was number 2.
What position were you?
Number 1.
He decided to cross the bridge by his house and look for food on the other side.
We're going to do half cup of chocolate chips, and the other one, we're going to do half cup of the blueberries.
So, grab your imagination hats and get ready to explore with us. Join us every Saturday at 9 a.m. for new friends, amazing stories, and tons of laughter.
Join us as we explore the journeys of those who defy the odds and break barriers. We dive deep into the stories of triumph.
Sometimes when parenting a child with a special need or whatever disability, family life becomes a bit complicated and you may end up raising the child on your own.
Here, we inspire.
I have a farm which one we showcase with other dyslexic youths and autism, how to farm.
Motivate.
It's never easy, but what we do, the best thing is to work with another parent who has an elder child than yours.
And break through the barriers one story at a time. Push your boundaries beyond the limit. Saturdays at 8 p.m.
Jiunge nasi tunapoangazia safari za viongozi bora. Kutoka kwa ushindi mkubwa hadi masomo magumu.
Wakati wetu kwamba wasichana si wa kusoma, ni wa kuolewa, ng'ombe ipatikane, wazazi wakuwa watajiri.
Tunashughulikia yote.
I wish I were a better investor.
My parents taught me how to look for things for myself.
Tazama Mfahamu Kiongozi, ambapo kila kipindi kimejaa maarifa, mikakati na hadithi za kukuza azma yako.
For me to succeed, I have to fight.
Kila Alhamisi saa 1:30.
Welcome back, and once again, good morning. This is the Morning Cafe on TV47 with me, Fred Ndimuli. We now want to get down and discuss the main headlines. And of course, the main one has to do with that revelation by the CS for Public Service through a statement to police on the abduction of his son and the people responsible for that abduction last year. And it is part of stories covered by one of our reporters here at TV47. Let's watch that story.
The recent surge in abductions over the months since June last year has elicited concerns from many over who is behind the abductions. And tonight, the National Intelligence Service has once again been thrown under the bus by yet another top government official. CS Public Service Justin Bedan Muturi, a man at the helm of a critical ministry, seemingly disturbed as a nerve could have been touched by the same government he works for. Muturi unleashing a damning bombshell in his statement to the police today that his son had been abducted by the National Intelligence Service and that his release happened after the president's intervention. In his statement to the DCI unit at the Kilimani police station, Muturi intimates that his search for his missing son at the time led him to a physical meeting with President William Ruto, and that a call by President William Ruto to NIS boss Nurdin Haji confirmed that the NIS were holding his son. Muturi's son, Leslie Muturi, was allegedly abducted on the 22nd of June 2024 around the Kilimani area, allegedly by armed men. This would mark the beginning of an agonizing time for the CS, sharing on his statement his pleadings with government officials in his attempt to put an end to his troubles. According to Muturi, the president in his call to Nurdin Haji ordered the immediate release of his son, to which the NIS chief said the release would happen within an hour. On Sunday, Muturi took the Kenya Kwanza government to task over the recent abductions in the country. His sentiments, however, have not augured well with a section of leaders who are now calling for his resignation.
I would just say bring it on, I mean, at my age, I'm not the kind of person to respond to some of it is really very perfunctory.
The revelations from CS Muturi come at a time when Inspector General of Police Douglas Kanja has constantly denied assertions that the National Police Service is involved in the increased kidnappings and abduction cases witnessed since June last year. Sheila Chelangat for TV47.
Yes, indeed, it is the biggest discussion today, even on our dailies. Muturi spills the beans. That's the big headline on the front page of the Daily Nation. NIS abductor-in-chief is a question being asked on the front page of the Standard. On the Star, they talk about Muturi NIS abductions bombshell. And on the People Daily, let me just confirm the exact headline. On the People Daily, they say, how come I can't get it? Muturi ups war on Ruto. And on Taifa Leo anasema ni nchi ya wahuni. Today we also feature on the dailies in Tanzania and Uganda, and we'll be looking at that. At least in Tanzania, the two major dailies in Tanzania, that's Mwananchi wanauliza Kenya sehemu salama hatari kwa wageni. Ni swali tu. And the big headline on the Citizen still in Tanzania, they talk about Nairobi's safety concerns cast shadow over city's reputation. And that's a big headline in a foreign country about our city, Nairobi. This morning we're privileged to have in studio with us, beginning on my immediate right, Josephat Kamanya, political analyst, karibu sana. Njeri Kahiga, National Youth Leader, karibu sana Njeri. And Happy New Year. This is your first time on this station this year, karibu sana.
Asante.
Dismas Moko at least was here last week. Dismas Moko is a political risk analyst, karibu sana. We're still hoping to have one more panelist join us. But this story has gone beyond our borders. We are already in Tanzanian papers. The fact that both Uganda and Tanzania have stories to tell about how good in abductions we've become as Kenyans. But the most interesting story is the one as revealed by the CS for Public Service. And this speaks a lot because for the very first time, we have a very senior government official pointing a definitive direction as to who is responsible for these abductions. Bwana Kamanya, do you trust the CS for Public Service?
A very good morning to our viewers, Fred, and a quick reminder to the road users to, drive safe and share the road. Well, I think by the virtue of the office that JB Muturi holds, I would not imagine that he can come out and fabricate such a story. Further, I think him stepping out and addressing Kenyans directly, he seems to have exhausted all internal avenues that he would have explored or exploited in furtherance of this conversation. And it begs for the question that what about those parents whose kids have been abducted, released or ended up dead afterwards, who cannot speak to the president, who cannot speak to all the security agencies that JB Muturi has been able to access. So I think, in my opinion, his story means something, and I like that he did come out at the time and in the manner that he has, because the greatest threat that we are facing as Kenyans is internal insecurity. Because when you hear of abductions happening and you see them really happening, I maintain the position that the government is responsible, either because of action or inaction.
Yes.
So I feel his story is leading somewhere, and I'm happy to see that he even showed up to register a statement. Remember, he's a lawyer, so he can even represent himself. He understands the law. So it's a bold step, again, because a lot of people are saying, no, he should have handled this internally. And you've also seen threats from some MPs when he responded and says he cannot respond to such a perfunctory statement, threatening him to either withdraw the statement or he'll be impeached. So it opens up a Pandora's box. Okay. And I think the opposition from within continues.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that he has made these revelations, Jerry, that now we have someone that you can look at and say, there are other people who are missing. Are you the one holding them? Because up till now, we still didn't have a definitive name or individual organization that should be held accountable. Now, this is a person who was Attorney General then, giving an account, a personal account of who was talked to for his son to be released. And now that we are clear, or at least from that highest level, we know that the NIS chief could be, in one way or another, involved in this kind of abductions. What next?
Thank you so much, Fred. I think I'm fortunate enough to have been here that Friday morning after the son to CS was abducted. And if I remember very well, the conversation was very difficult because for somebody who was then an acting general, Attorney General, for him to wake up to his son being abducted, it gave us the question of if they can abduct a son to somebody in power, then what is the next step? And true to it, less than 1 year down the line, everybody can be abducted. including a tourist from any other country that their government thinks is in Kenya to seek asylum or maybe to hide from the government that they criticize. And it's a very sad state, and especially by the fact that the members of parliament, the first reaction is not to even put the NIS chief on the stand and to get the correct position. Their first stand is impeachment, and it rolls back to the time of the impeachment of the former deputy president, Rigathi Gachagua. So in this nation, any time that somebody disagrees with the government or says something that puts the government on a spot, they are prone to impeachment, because the moment we listen to this member of parliament from Kisii County talking about if he does not resign or he does not apologize, we're gonna impeach him. It takes us back to when Gladys Sholei at a meeting was seen holding a cane and saying, we are Gachagua, we are going to deal with him. And again, we backdate to recently at a funeral when Gladys Sholei told the president, you know what, I am somebody who does whatever you say. The last time you told us to impeach Gachagua, he sure went home. So first of all is to appreciate the likes of CS Justin Muturi, because not many would stand up to that. And yesterday during the CS interview with the committee, I had one MP ask, what is going to be the response of those CSs if they come a time when they don't agree with the president, or maybe they don't agree with the cabinet meetings? And the question narrows down to, are we in a nation whereby if you don't agree with your boss, you are the wrong person? Shouldn't we have a government where the people inside can also correct the government? Shouldn't we have a president and a regime that is open to listening to their people? Because for somebody to openly come outside, it means behind the scenes they've tried every other means. Look at the government GDS official who recently resigned. He said the reason he resigned is because he realized nothing is going to move forward, and he felt that his reputation was at stake. The moment government officials, who we all know have very lucrative jobs, and because those jobs are not a job that anybody would mind having, but for such people to resign, it begs the question, where are we as a nation? Okay. And amidst all these kind of politics, then what next? Because we can't be in a nation where every other day it's impeachment and threats, and to this extent, over the Christmas holiday, some parents ate Christmas without their children. We can't be in a nation where our democracy is infringed to an extent where nobody is allowed to talk and people can throw words left, right, and center in the presence of the president, and nothing is done about it. Because until today, the young people are still asking if Fala Maalim can speak such words in the presence of the president, and he was not cautioned. The president did not even take the microphone and say, you know what, you went a little bit overboard, and I think that was too much. Then maybe behind the scenes correct him. But they still want to hold the standard of the young people are quite disrespectful. Okay. They are going overboard on social media.
Okay.
Yeah.
The People Daily, they say Muturi ups war on Ruto. This indicating that there is some problem within the administration, that this is Ruto's CS, who's, according to this paper, waging a war on his boss. And people wonder, okay, could this be an implosion of the Kenya Kwanza administration? Should we see that as an implosion?
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity. First things first, these abductions are exposing Kenya to reputational liabilities. Initially, it was only reported in the Kenyan media and international media, international networks. But now our neighbors who have viewed Kenya as a safe haven are starting to ask questions. That is Nairobi, in fact, safe? Can we go to Nairobi over the weekend, do our shopping, have our fun, and come back to our countries the way we used to do in the past? And in my view, there is a responsibility on the administration to offer clarity on whether these are arrests or abduction. Because we cannot have our neighbors taunting us, saying that Kenya is no longer safe. You know, now they've started describing the estates in Nairobi, saying this one is safe, this one is unsafe, this is the way their law enforcement officers are behaving. And you remember in the region, we've got the strongest constitution, the Bill of Rights, where we have freedom of expression, freedom of movement, where you can literally say whatever you want to say, provided it doesn't go into the space of libel and slander. So the administration has got a unique opportunity to do very serious investigations and offers clarity. That is number one. Number two, Mr. J.B. Muturi is highly regarded. I mean, he served as a magistrate, served as an MP, served as a speaker for 2 terms, served as an attorney general, and right now he's a cabinet secretary. But in this conversation, we must ask ourselves, who is actually speaking? Is it the lawyer or is it the politician? Now, if it's a politician, politicians are known to say so many reckless things for them to grab page 1 attention like he has done. But if it's the lawyer speaking, then there is a primary source of concern. It means that in his capacity as an attorney general, who sits in the National Security Council, he had no idea of what was going on in the nation. That when these abductions or arrests were taking place, he had no capacity, he had no competence, he didn't know what was going on. And of course, there are 2 sides to the story. Initially, when he came up and he said, I'm unhappy with the state of abduction, people said, wait a minute, why can't you go to a police station and record a statement? He has now recorded a statement. And one hopes that that statement was recorded by Muturi, the lawyer, and not Muturi, the politician. Now, Kenyans have got very valid expectations that all the people mentioned in that letter and they covered in the Standard, all of them would also issue their side of the story. Because right now, as we see it, we only have Muturi's side of the story. So the NIS director, Raymond Omolo, Kome, all of them need to come up and give us a position so that we develop clarity. But again, going to the space of collective responsibility, if indeed what Muturi has indicated is an accurate reflection of events, that when his son was abducted, he was helpless, sleepless nights, that he had to go and speak with his boss, who in turn made a call for his son to be released, then it means he has lost confidence in the appointing authority, and he must therefore resign. Because you cannot lose confidence in the appointing authority and then you go on serving in his cabinet. Now that is where the politician may come to play, that he wants to rock the boat, he gets fired for purposes of political capital. And in my view, as Kenyans, we must start embracing this art of resignation. If you're unhappy with the position you are holding, if you're unhappy with the appointing authority, you feel uncomfortable that the abductions or arrests have actually come to haunt you in your home, then you must resign immediately.
And let's focus on that bit of politics, the political dynamics there. That and if at all it's purely political, because yes, that's just one angle. We're not saying it's the only angle, but there could be a political angle. If at all it's politics, and the suggestion is that then he should go ahead and resign. But there's political capital to be gained by these events that are happening. Do you think that a resignation would give the same dividends as probably a sacking by his boss?
Well, you see, it's a catch-22 because on one end, he's confirming a fallout with the boss, with the appointing authority. However this plays out, it is clear that he has lost, and I agree, that he has lost confidence in the appointing authority. And it is eminent, either he's going to resign or get impeached. I don't see him continuing working with this regime as is. But how would that interpret politically for him? I don't see any political expediency because remember, we're on a very slippery road. The region JB Muturi comes from has just gotten in extension a deputy president. So to what benefit would he really be working towards politically? And it may not be much of a political gain for him, but definitely it's going to be a political loss for the president, irregardless how this plays out. Because already you can see the nature of abductions we are talking about, they are highly political. And it is unfortunate that JB is able to come out and confirm the president had to intervene for his son to be released. And we are hearing also a story that the president had to be on call for Maria, the Tanzanian, to be released as well. So it exposes the underbelly of the operations that this regime is running and all the security agencies they are in. So for JB, I don't know, because again, we must be very cognizant with his journey in the last 2 or so years. He's been very quiet politically. he has not really come out to assume a particular position on matters, whether it's the economy or political statements. So it's a person to watch. He's been in the game for a while. I always say that a fall is not necessarily the end of your journey. You know, it depends on how you dust yourself and repackage yourself and move on. Because he's a seasoned politician, that we must give to him. He knows the inroads and the networks politically. So it is what he makes of it will determine whether politically he gains some mileage or he's just basically falling off.
And we will continue with this conversation on whether or not there are serious political implications of his resignation or firing after the break. You're watching Morning Cafe. We continue looking at the big headlines today. And of course, the main discussion being the statement by the CS for Public Service on the abduction of his son last year.
To pursue Are you ready to elevate your business game?
As long as you're earning something, there's always that opportunity to save. And you start with where you are.
Kama wewe ni mfanyabiashara, huwezi kaa bure, unajipanga taratibu vile inavyofaa.
Join us each week as we dive into the stories of the world's most driven entrepreneurs.
When you pay attention to detail, you get luxury items.
The Grind, where business meets brilliance. Tune in every Monday at 7:30 p.m. because your business deserves the best.
Hey there friends, welcome to Kids on the Block, where fun and imagination come alive. We dive into magical world filled with exciting adventures and awesome friends.
What position were you in?
I was number 2.
What position were you?
Number 1.
He decided to cross the bridge by his house and look for food on the other side.
We're going to do half cup of chocolate chips, and the other one, we're going to do half cup of the blueberries.
So, grab your imagination hats and get ready to explore with us. Join us every Saturday at 9 a.m. for new friends, amazing stories, and tons of laughter.
Join us as we explore the journeys of those who defy the odds and break barriers. We dive deep into the stories of triumph.
Sometimes when parenting a child with a special need or whatever disability, family life becomes a bit complicated and you may end up raising the child on your own.
Here, we inspire.
I have a farm which one we showcase with other dyslexic youths and autism, how to farm.
Motivate.
It's never easy, but what we do, the best thing is to work with another parent who has an elder child than yours.
And break through the barriers one story at a time. Push your boundaries beyond the limit. Saturdays at 8 p.m.
Welcome back. You're still watching Morning Cafe on TV 47 with me, Fred Indimuli. We continue looking at the big headlines. Muturi and his face on all the front pages today. That statement on the abduction of his son sometime last year making headlines. And it is a conversation that we continue looking at here with Dismas Mukua, Josephat Kamanya and Njeri Kahiga. Now, we're not saying that it's purely political, but let's for a moment just talk about the politics of it. We also noticed that when on Sunday, when the CS on Sunday issued a press briefing, that among those people who was present was MP John Mukunji of Manyata constituency, who was an ally of the former deputy president. It does not escape our notice that allegiances could be shifting and changing. A sitting CS who's not given his resignation, appearing to have some dalliance with the former deputy president. That in itself says a lot, that yes, there could be some security concerns, but there are political inclinations as well. Jerry.
Is it a crime to be seen with friends of your friends? You know, because if Manyata MP is a friend to the former deputy president, he's still a sitting MP. He can be around anybody. And for me, I don't want to think it in that line, because first of all, we saw when CS was in a barrio somewhere in Embu, and people refused him to read the condolences of the president, you know. And if we were to look at it politically, maybe he felt safer with going for the presser with somebody who is people-oriented, because right now it's the political scenario is not in 3 shades, it's in 2 shades. You're either with the oppressor or with the oppressed. So for CS JB being one of the oppressed, because when your son is abducted, you are not the oppressor, you are the oppressed. So him being on the same side with those who are oppressed is not, I don't want to read much into it politically, but what I can say is, if politically JB today decides to join the allies of the former deputy president, first of all, it's not a crime. 2, it's not morally wrong, because it's his choice politically to decide which side of history he wants to be. Does he want to go down in history as the CS who was quiet when abductions were happening? What does he want to be to go down in history as the person who allowed the oppressor to keep oppressing Kenyans? Because anybody who is silent at such a situation is supporting the oppressor, because if you can't speak out, even when things like these are happening day in, day out, because for newspapers in Uganda, Tanzania to read Kenya in terms of abductions, for a journalist in South Africa to raise the question of abductions, and you in Kenya as a CS, or maybe as a sitting member of parliament, senator, or whatever capacity you are sitting in government, and you don't think there's a problem, then that is a lot of hypocrisy. So for me, if he decides to join the allies of Gachagua, well for him, because at the end of the day, in Kenya, we've made, there's a very thin line between being politically right and being morally right. And sometimes it's a mix-up. Okay. But whatever his decision is, I know at this point, anybody who wants to survive politically and anybody who wants to be honest with this regime, you have to be where the people are. Okay. The people are on the side of saying abductions are illegal. They should not be happening. And if JB has decided, me as a sitting CS, I want to be among the people in government who stand up for what is right. Let us see maybe in the next 6 or 3 months, how many more government officials, because every other day we wake up to stories of so-and-so wants to resign, so-and-so wants to resign. Everybody is at a situation of you either resign or you either remain in government, but behind the scenes, we can all listen to the conversation and it's getting hot.
Okay. Yeah. There are those chants from the president's allies of impeach him. Censure motion against the CS public service. Mary Keitany has promised to do that. Silvana Sosoro has threatened to impeach or to push for a motion of impeachment. Do these serve the president or the administration of the day, such chants, when the issue is about abductions?
First of all, it appointed politicians in Kenya, especially the one who serve in the cabinet, probability of them resigning on their own motion is almost 0, because the political capital you get is almost 0. But when you get fired, then you can go back to your village in a huge motorcade and say that I've been fired because I was supporting you. And that is a very good art in political science, because that's what all politicians tell us, that in fact I'm fighting for your rights. Now, in the next week, Monday, Donald Trump is going to be inaugurated into office. One of his rallying calls was telling people that all these court cases you see, it's not about it's not about you people, it's about me. They want to get me because as soon as they get me, then they'll come for you. So I'm the buffer. And he told Americans that if you don't elect me, you're going to be in trouble. So if Muturi gets fired, he'll go back to his populace and tell them that I was fired because I was fighting for your rights. Don't forget the fact that Muturi wanted to become president of the Republic of Kenya. And he did campaigns for a while. And then at some stage he said, no, wait a minute. I'm not going to work with Kenya Kwanza. So there's a very high probability that his presidential interests were just placed on ice. And he has now seen an opportunity where he can resuscitate the ice. And what is the best way to do this is to look for very hot water, pour it on the cold ice, and then it becomes a liquid, and then you go to the next level. So probability of him resigning on his own motion is 0, because if he resigns, it will be covered for maybe a day or two, and then he will slide into history books, into a dark forest. Nobody would know him. Now, the MPs were suggesting that he should undergo an impeachment motion. Will be handing over to Muturi a red rose. They'll be giving him political capital. Because going through the motions of impeachment will give Muturi the political capital he's looking for. And there's a very high probability that when he rises to defend himself, if indeed what the headlines are talking about are spilling the beans, then during the impeachment motion, I don't know the next level after spilling the beans. I don't know whether it's going out to open floodgates and have all the waters, all the fires like what we see in California. But I can predict that wherever he's seated, when he hears his MP saying that they want to impeach him, he's rubbing his hands with glee saying, bring it on. This is actually what I want. And in my view, any member of the National Assembly suggesting impeachment is actually being naive, wet behind their ears, because it appears then they don't understand the political situation. But critically speaking, as Muturi spills the beans, he's given his side of the story. There's a very valid expectation from Kenyans that all the people who have been mentioned here also give their side of the story. And how are they going to give this side of the story? In my view, this matter now must be taken by the relevant committees in the National Assembly or Senate, so that people have very elaborate presentations. There's even an opportunity for cross-examination. I don't know whether the standing orders provide for that, so that all these people flood Kenyans with information to allow rational Kenyans to take a decision. Because since time immemorial, every story has got two sides. For instance, he said, he had the president speak with the NIS director. So we'd like to know, what was the distance between him and the president? How did he know that the president was speaking to the NIS director? And did he listen to the entire conversation? Is there a bit more information that he listened that he has not yet made public that would be of interest to Kenyans? So all these people, when they're mentioned, then it will even make our institutions very strong. And this is what we need as a nation. For me, I choose to look at it that this is an opportunity for us really to interrogate these public servants of rank and understand, do these public servants of rank in fact work for morale or they work for their individual interest? If you flip the coin, say if Muturi's son had not been abducted, as he says, would he have taken this opportunity to do a news conference on Sunday? Would he have taken this opportunity to say that he's unhappy with the state of abduction, or he would have sat still at his residence and have his coffee, as the rest of the Kenyans are complaining about abductions in high pitches? So having a parliamentary hearing, in my view, would be very useful so that we have a clarity on this matter.
Okay. The cartoon on the Star today paints a picture of a flock of sheep, most of them white, but now one depicting the CS for Public Service as a black sheep. Yet you can still see a few other black sheep within the larger flock of white sheep. And the question is, could this just be the beginning of probably the perceived implosion within Kenya Kwanza, that there could be other dissatisfied or voices of dissent that have so far remained quiet, and probably with what CS Muturi has done, should we expect more of such going forward?
Evidently, the cracks are giving. So it is not irrational to expect more fallout within the party, the presidency, the government. And I think we have been watching keenly, and you realize that the greatest critics of the government are coming from within. This is a sitting CS. And when I look at him and I look at the caricature, the cartoon and the star, just because he spoke on a very personal matter, because you're talking about his son who was abducted, then he has become an enemy of the state. I would wonder how much he was expected to suppress, not just the emotions, but the thoughts of, and the anguish that him and his family have been going through, how much he was expected, how much more he's been overlooking, knowing that the government is doing the wrong things to other Kenyans who cannot come out and speak for themselves. I expect more fallout from this regime. That certainly is the case. And I maintain a position that with friends like the one the president is keeping around, the likes of Murkomen, Farah Maalim, Soro, and many others, he does not need enemies. Those are enough to bring this government down. Because their utterances, not only are they demeaning, but they continue to inject anger to the common Kenyan. Because you have to ask yourself, if a whole CS is saying that we have a rogue agency or a rogue operation that is happening in the country, and remember all this is happening in the quest for good governance, and then he's castigated the way we are seeing, we must ask ourselves, what is the president's position? Because all these people who are now coming after JB, just in these last few days, are lieutenants of the president. They've come out and insulted Kenyans in front of the president. They've come out and now they're going after JB. And I know he's going to leave office, whether through impeachment or resignation, and I agree, him resigning may not be the first thing he does. I think if I were him also, I would play this to the very end. Let them impeach me, let them come out. And I would want to see how that plays out. But we must wonder now, what kind of a country are we running? Of importance is not how much fallout there will be in government, because already there is a huge trust deficit from Kenyans to this government. We don't have an opposition. Where is the opposition in all these matters? I think the government joined the opposition, and now the people in government who feel this government has gone rogue, they are joining the people, because the people are the ones who are revolting, and there is a revolution whether they want to accept it or not, on how to change this country. So this government is really not going anywhere. It's just a matter of time. It is just a matter of time. And what I would hope for is that they don't, if the center is not holding, why can they just all resign? And we go for a snap election? Because it's getting messy.
Right. Indeed, it is getting messy, and it's getting messy for us within this region of East Africa. If you look at the cartoon on the People Daily, there's a caricature of someone coming down the steps of an airplane. It's called Foreigners Airways, someone visiting Kenya. Just after the steps from the plane, there's a red carpet that leads straight into a deep hole that's written Abductions. That is what the cartoon on the People Daily is talking about. The one on the Standard has the 3 presidents of East Africa. That's William Ruto, Samia Suluhu Hassan, and Yoweri Museveni, who are now called by the commentator there as the Eastern Abduction Community, EAC. And they're saying here, while taking a selfie, pamoja tuangamize upinzani. This conversation has gone beyond Kenya, but yet the bad behavior started here in Kenya. 2 cases, the journalist from Tanzania, the opposition leader Kizza Besigye in Uganda. Now we are finding ourselves on the front page of a Tanzanian daily. Nairobi's safety concerns cast shadow over city's reputation, and this is the explanation. Kenya, once renowned for its welcoming atmosphere towards foreigners, is now grappling with a rise in security concerns, including recent abductions of both locals and foreigners. This problem is growing. Kenya's image is being tarnished. Is this something that we can repair simply by our own politics around here?
First of all, it's very unfortunate that, when the world is viewing Kenya as that person who, if you want to deal with your enemy, and they're in Kenya, you can be sure you are sorted out. And it's very unfortunate because this comes at a time when we are hoping that BAMBA can take the AUC seat. So I think the first factual and data correct state of our international diplomacy will be shown in the AUC elections, because I'm very sure, apart from the Uganda activist, opposition leader, and the Tanzania activist, when the South African journalist raised questions about the, the BABA AUC candidacy, it brought a very difficult conversation on the social media, because everybody's asking themselves, why is it that every other person, these people run to Kenya because they feel Kenya is safe? In their mind, it shows that they felt Kenya was safe. Maybe this would be because for the longest time we have not had instances where people from other countries come to Kenya and they're abducted at this big rate. But one thing is for sure, BABA will be the first collateral damage of this AUC.
You're already saying him as a casualty because
yeah, he's a casualty because if your own nation where you come from cannot handle the safety of Kenyans, and your own nation where you come from cannot assure us as African presidents and African people that we can come to Kenya and be safe, then why should we give you a position such as AUC? So what I know is BABA will be the first casualty, and for Kenyans, I think the mode has been very clear. I've even seen Kenyans on Twitter say that if the Djibouti person takes it, he needs to come to Kenya for celebration. That shows how much Kenyans are eager to show the world who BABA is. I mean, who this regime is. And by the virtue of BABA has made it clear that he is in he's in good books with this regime, then he's going to be one of the people who take the burden home. But also again, in terms of tourist destination, we are going lower, because no tourist wants to come to Kenya and end up abducted. Because what about the case of mistaken identity? I listened to the lady from Tanzania speak, and they were so sure it's her. The lady kept saying that they were talking to her in Swahili, hoping she would respond, and it begged the question, how long can this go on? We've now stopped abducting Kenyans. We've now made other presidents who are dictators in their countries feel like we can also give them a hand in whatever activities they want to do. Then what happens when Kenya becomes unbearable? Are Kenyans going to be accommodated in other nations if we as a country can't accommodate people of different divergent opinions? It's very unfortunate that they were not abducted in their own countries. In their countries, the government in their countries was not able to bring them into hostage. But when they come to Kenya, at a snap of a finger, it happens. So it's a sad state, and I really hope that the embassies and every other the international relations can really step in, because we are looking at a case of going back to ICC, and I don't know where that is going to put us.
And William Ruto, the president, worked really hard in his first 1-2 years of presidency, trying to build the image of this country outside, with all the trips he made on the international scene, trying to elevate Kenya's image. Now we see a situation where the Dutch government has received about 300 emails from Kenyans who are asking the monarch there not to travel to Kenya because of what's happening here. Now, this is just the wider picture of how critics of this administration have been trying to tell people out there there's a problem in it. Is this administration playing into the hands of its critics? That now we're seeing headlines in Tanzania speaking of the same.
Well, you speak about President Ruto. The last 2 years, he has engaged the high gear in economic diplomacy, positioning Kenya as an FDI destination, catalyzing our exports and creating opportunities for Kenyan human capital to go all over the world. As late as yesterday, the Prime Cabinet Secretary, Musalia Mudavadi, has signed a comprehensive agreement with Abu Dhabi that will open opportunities again for Kenyans who want to engage in livestock and livestock products, farming, all these activities. And the abductions stands out as a stain on the international relations space. However, there's a unique opportunity to engage in reputation management, because the president pronounced himself that he does not support abductions and it doesn't want abductions to take place. Now, if you have a parliamentary hearing, it will bring out all the key actors and will understand their motivation. And from that stage, then the law enforcement agencies will take action on whoever is responsible for this abduction. We can repair that international image if the architects of this abduction are put behind bars. Because it's a very sad day for Kenya that countries that do not have a very solid constitution like we do are now making us a laughing stock. They're saying that we considered Kenya to be a safe place, but it's no longer the case. So the administration must do this in a matter which is, actually this is a very urgent matter. And right now, the buck stops with the National Assembly and Senate, because they've got the constitutional responsibility to call these leaders in law enforcement to go to Parliament, go to the relevant committee, and they do a special investigation and really find out what is the crux of the matter. You remember a few weeks ago, the National Police Service said they don't know who is doing abductions, but we said they ought to know who is doing abductions. Now Muturi has said that it's actually the NIS doing abductions. So every person is coming giving a statement. And I suspect there will be many more statements coming to town. So we need an independent organization which will actually investigate this, and that mandate falls within the domain of the National Assembly. Now, for the election of Mr. Raila Odinga to the AISU position, contrary to popular opinion, the people, the voters for that role, have got a very strong understanding of Kenya, I've got a very strong understanding of politics, and the decision has been made. So suggesting that Mr. Raila Odinga is going to be a casualty, yes, the voters are limited. It's for the longest time, it was a club of gentlemen. You know, it's like the election of the Pope. It's a small group of people who gather in a room and take decisions. However, it's important that Mr. Raila Odinga adds his voice to this conversation. He has pronounced himself in the past, but there's no upper limit on the number of pronouncements he can make, because his words have got a political...
Do you think he has at liberty to actually come and delve into these matters of abduction and speak freely, probably condemning the same, now that you can see the link between his benefactor, the president, and their actions?
He spoke about abduction a few days ago. Well, I think he was in Homa Bay or Migori. He pronounced himself, and also the president pronounced himself. But as indicated, there's no upper limit. Because at some stage, you know, we look at these abductions as pieces of statistics. But we are talking about human beings who go missing, and you leave families wondering what is happening. And as one of the panelists has indicated, if you don't have your father or mother or a family member in a place of power, who is going to take that call? For Muturi, he's lucky. He knows the president. He can send him a WhatsApp message, and they can keep on checking to find out whether or not the president has read his WhatsApp message. Muturi can literally call anybody and everybody in Kenya. But what of poor Mura, poor Wanjiko, who doesn't even have airtime to make the call, who doesn't even have WhatsApp installed on her phone? What do they do? That is the reason why, anchored on the strong 2010 constitution, we need Parliament to come up and demonstrate leadership by going to the crux of the matter. If they don't do this, it's not just going to be a threat on our reputation, East Africa, Africa, or at a global level. Abduction can become an industry. There are countries in West Africa where people earn a living from abductions, and we cannot entertain that idea.
Yeah, it's interesting that you suggest that Parliament can be a point of help for this, but there seems to be, or rather the consensus is that Parliament is already gone, and that's not probably the place we can get help from. If you look at the headline on the front page of Taifa Leo, anasema ni nchi ya wahuni. Yes? There's a lot of lack of confidence in the executive. We saw what happened with the parliament, lack of confidence as well. And now even with the judiciary, with the latest pronouncements on this same matter of abductions, with the orders being given by the court, summons to the IG and DCI boss, and they blatantly refuse. There's a general feeling that none of these structures of government can actually serve us in as far as this issue is concerned. Hence, the headline on the front page of Taifa Leo sema nchi ya wahuni, raia wahisi mfumo wa sheria hauwajibiki na sasa wajigeuza wanaendesha mashtaka, au ni mashahidi na ni hakimu.
Now, in the Muli, lack of confidence in these institutions, in my view, is a key success factor. Because when you don't have confidence in these institutions, the persons leading those organizations are on alert all the time. They have to keep on pulling up their socks. But you see what the
judiciary... to have a lot of confidence in the legislature, for example.
No, let me start with the judiciary. The judiciary, they enjoy, speaking about the judges, they enjoy decisional independence. They take decisions on their own motion. And you've seen the last couple of weeks, judges pronouncing themselves in black and white.
Without
there is no gray.
Without consequence.
No, I mean, you may remember the case of the acting Inspector General of Police, Masengali, when the judges said that if you don't show up, you're going to be behind bars. And you saw what he did during the last minute to avoid that. There were maybe...
And that's a perfect example that Gilbert Masengeli was actually sentenced, but there was no consequence. He did not serve an hour behind bars.
No, but he went back to the...
And said
he went back to, he acquitted himself because he knew that there would be penal consequences, and again he would be barred from office in total. So we must allow the judiciary to exercise itself.
There was still no consequence for Gilbert Masengeli. There will be no consequence for the Director General of the DCI, even the police IG. And Kenyans are feeling it and now taking the law into their own hands. Do you agree that probably Kenyans have lost confidence in all these structures of government?
Totally, I agree. Because, and it's playing out. It's playing out. We saw in Nakuru a public intervention when some guy was being arrested. And this is not the way we want to go as a country, because once we start executing either public arrest or public revolt against arrest, and some of these arrests could be legitimate, then we will be just getting ourselves into anarchy. And why? Because of the failure of government to offer the services it's supposed to. When we talk about the judiciary, it's about executing the law. When you talk about all the security agencies, it's about protection of both life and property. If they're not able to do that, then Kenyans have, there can never be vacuum in power. Kenyans have to step up and do something to safeguard themselves. Unfortunately, this is how now countries disintegrate. And you hear of now specific groupings coming up in terms of gangs or mafia and all that. And we've seen other countries, like he says, when there is total anarchy, then abductions can become an industry. That is one. Two, people will take advantage of the insecurity in the country. And three, this is what you were talking about earlier, the diplomatic relations come into play. And this has a very huge economic impact. Already in the region, we are a laughing stock, because we have gotten a person from Uganda back into a military jail. We've had just recently now the Tanzanian lady who was abducted. It took international intervention for her to be released, or so the story goes. Now, one must ask, one must wonder, to what extent does it hurt us internationally? Because tourists, remember, for a long time, we've had guidelines from embassies, and people have been advisories rather, do not visit specific areas in Kenya because of insecurity issues. Now, it is almost do not go to Kenya, because, especially if you're a person who is politically exposed, chances are you might be abducted. We may lose you in one way or the other. We don't want that kind of conversation to continue happening. But more of interest to me is the economic implication of all this. Because remember, Kenya has been the hub of Africa. All great companies who have wanted to invest in Africa have gone through Kenya, have come via Kenya, and they've done their, even if it's research. In Africa, if you want to do a business model and roll it out, Kenya becomes one of the places you come to benchmark, or if not research. And the moment that they start feeling insecure, the moment that we start seeing even some of our companies going down because of losing international partners, it eats into, we keep talking about unemployment, we keep talking about lack of enough tax collection. It eats into our economic development. It hurts our international image. And the president, if you remember, he was very vocal in his first few months in office. He went around trying to position Kenya as this great nation where all investors should come, all people should come and feel safe. Now, the reverse, or the exact reverse of that is what is happening. So it's very alarming. We must be worried as a country. And the loss of trust or confidence in all these organizations, it's only judiciary, which we are saying is our last line of defense.
Is it? Because that's the question. According to the headline on the front page of the Taifa Leo anasema Kenya imebadilika kuwa nchi ya magenge ya wahuni wanaovamia, kuteka na kuua wakazi na kuwafanya raia kuchukua sheria mikononi, ikiwa ni pamoja na kuvamia vituo vya polisi kuadhibu washukiwa.
I agree kwa sababu polisi ndio wanafaa kuwa wanalinda sisi. If they are not able to do that, if the parliament is not able to step up and invite, because this should have happened a long time ago, we should have had the former CS Interior sitting in parliament and explaining himself and pronouncing himself not only from about abductions, but also remember the killings during the Gen Z demonstrations. But parliament has failed. We know it's the most incompetent assembly we have so far. So
I'm just sampling some comments here, and I think they have to do with that AU competition.
Yes.
On our YouTube page. Warren Tankwa says, how are opposition parties being treated in Djibouti? He's asking, I guess because the other candidate comes from there. The current president there has been in power for 26 years. The AU candidate has been the foreign minister for 20 years. He goes on to say, are opposition parties allowed to operate in Djibouti, their candidates for celebration in Kenya? Okay, just questioning why we seem to be supporting the Djiboutian candidate instead of Kenya. I don't think we are really supporting the Djibouti candidate. We're just opposed to what is happening locally.
It is the Kenyan candidate we are not supporting.
Yes.
But the best option for Africa, given the three candidates, it's seeming to be the Djibouti candidate. I think I want to agree with my panelists that, one, if BAMBA is not able to come out and pronounces himself on matters of the East African region, because Uganda and Tanzania are key players in the region, and the matters of abduction and the lack of rule of law, then really, what does he have to offer Africa?
And listening to the two gentlemen, you seem to suggest that BAMBA is a person that we need to come out and speak about this. We have the structures, we have parliament. Where there seems to be a lack of confidence on whether or not parliament can actually be our solution to this. Because you question the fact that all these revelations need to be scrutinized. Who is going to do the scrutiny? If at all we do not believe in parliament, the judiciary appears to be a bit toothless, and that I'm just saying because of what we've seen with the police IG and the police bosses. So who is going to lead this conversation? Who can bring clarity to this matter? The two gentlemen seem to suggest that it's Raila Odinga.
First of all, why people are very agitated by the fact that BAMBA is our AUC candidate is the fact that we know before BAMBA applied, there were rumors that, also the former president had applied and other people had applied. And for political reasons, the president found it right that BAMBA be the candidate. And we don't have, why Kenyans feel it's better for the Djibouti guy to get it. It's because BAMBA has proved that anytime, regardless of people are being killed, people are being abducted, as long as he can get his people in the system, he's going to support the regime. Because if BAMBA today was not the AUC candidate, I am very sure we would be having maandamano in Kenya as we speak, led by him. But simply because he's on the right side with the government, he's very quiet about the issue, even when the newspapers in Tanzania are talking about Kenya abductions. And there's a time that he has stood up and talked about abductions, but how did he do it? Was it in the same vigor that he did when he was in opposition? That is a question. And I want to tell Kenyans, nobody is wishing BAMBA to fail, but we're also not wishing Africa to rubber stamp the fact that Kenya is a nation that we cannot have a stand of our own. We don't want Africa to label Kenya as the country that gave them somebody in power who went to AUC and did not take it to the next level and maybe took it back. And we don't want Africa to remember Kenya for a history of bringing somebody who will negotiate every other thing out across the board as long as it benefits him. And in response to the question on the judiciary and everything else, first of all, in a nation where the courts can summon somebody like the Inspector General and it does not show up in court, and we want Kenyans...
Without consequence.
Yes, and we want Kenyans tomorrow when somebody steals a chicken or a goat to be summoned and to be taken to court, to be harassed and all those kind of things, but does not happen the same when anybody in government is involved. Is the case that I've repeatedly said that the government is reading the Constitution like a newspaper. And they have decided to read the juicy part of the headlines, and they have left Kenyans to deal with the obituaries and those boring parts of the newspaper. Because if at all we are to uphold the Constitution, the same Constitution that has put the president into power should be the same Constitution that allows the IG to respect the Constitution enough to show up in court. And for the president to be quiet when his people are being, because when you're the president and your IG is being summoned and you cannot call him out, and maybe, you know, because I am very sure if today the president in Harare said, and the courts should be respected, if you are summoned, you need to show up, I am sure he would show up. So for him not showing up and no consequences, it means that this government has allowed, as long as you can sing their song, the court is not going to disturb you. But as long as you don't sing their song, you're going to be left right with courts. We've seen utterances of Majority Leader Kimani Ichung'wah in the burial of the Speaker's mother, when this person stands up and accuses somebody like the Governor Natembeya of very serious acts when he was in power. And the president is there. He does not call the majority leader out. We've listened to every other person being, as long as you're aligned to the president, he has no question with whatever you do, the things you involve yourself in. But when it's the other side of the story, it's a different case. And what is going to happen moving forward? You've seen news where police officers have gone to arrest somebody, or maybe Kenyans are not aware why you are picking somebody in plain uniform. And you know, sometimes, civically speaking, sometimes police officers cannot, are allowed to maybe show up in civilian, but they need to identify themselves. And at this point in Kenya, for any police officer's safety, they can't show up in civilian, first of all. And if they show up, I think they have to walk with a billboard indicating I'm a police officer and I've come to make an arrest, because their lives are in risk. Today, anybody owning a Subaru, if you are seen having an alternation with anybody, people are going to mistake you for the abductors. And in such a nation now, the question narrows down to, should everybody look out for themselves? Is it time that Kenya now, everybody is told now it's you on your own, because government is intentionally not going to safeguard our security as normal Kenyans, as long as we don't sing the song of the president? Right. And I was going through the Standard newspaper, and I was looking at how over time we have normalized this thing of we can change the constitution to extend the term limit of a president. Why are members of parliament so comfortable discussing the extension of the president, yet we don't have a functional IEBC? You know, the committee that was there back then, I can't remember the name, that said we have to have a functional, fully functional IEBC 3 years to elections. It's now 2.5 years to elections. So are we undermining the very body that has made the president stay in power and every other person who is elected? Are we going to allow this nation to go into the whole of we bring IEBC very late, or maybe elections get late, and as the Kamket guy said, you know, we don't care where the votes come from. We just know you're going to come back. You know, those are very reckless statements, and they are bringing the question of, do we look forward for fair and just elections in 2027, or we are looking at a situation whereby 2027 elections are going to be pick and drop from the regime of Kenya Kwanza. And
thank you for bringing that issue up about the IEBC, because it's like you read my mind. That is what I wanted us to go to next as we head towards the end of the show. Yes, indeed, on page 8 of the Standard, IEBC delay lawyers warn of looming crisis. Kenya is staring at a ticking time bomb because of its failure to restructure the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission as the country hurtles towards the 2027 general election. It quotes the Law Society of Kenya President Faith Odhiambo saying the delay in reconstituting IEBC becomes an urgent undertaking, noting that Kenya is at the risk of further breach of crucial constitutional electoral timelines. Remember that by March last year, as at March last year, we are already in defiance of the deadline on delimitation and review of boundaries. Yes?
Yes.
That is yet something that is yet to be addressed. Now, if we do not have IEBC in time, there are people who even argue that we could be entertaining a discussion of whether or not we can have elections in 2027. That is a very risky direction we are taking, Bwana Dismas. Now that you're a political risk analyst.
There's a huge risk of not having an IEBC in place. Even forget about 2027 for a while. There are many electoral areas today that are not represented because we don't have an IEBC that can run an election. But how did we get here? You remember at some stage, the president signed documents to give effect to the IEBC selection committee, which actually started work. And Mr. Raila Odinga and company said, wait a minute, we don't like the composition of that IEBC selection committee. Then a body called NADCO was formed. They came up with the amendments, and there was a new law, which again there was a new bill, which President Ruto signed into law. And before the committee could begin work, people went to court and said, wait a minute, I don't like this composition. And then another gentleman who is from an unparliamentary party said he wanted to represent a parliamentary party. And the reason why IEBC selection committee has not started work today is because about the judiciary that you have no confidence in. Because parties have gone to the judiciary and saying, we feel that this committee has not been composed in the right manner, that it doesn't capture disabilities' interests or the minority or the youth. There's the one that matter. And then, of course, there's this gentleman who had been selected, but the provisions require that you must be a member of a parliamentary party to represent a parliamentary party. But for him, he comes from an unparliamentary party. So there is that dispute. Now, that dispute has got nothing to do with the president. It's got nothing to do with the National Assembly. It's got everything to do with Kenyans who are dissatisfied with the composition of IEBC. And you recall at some stage you had indicated that when members of the National Assembly are coming up with this kind of legislation, maybe they need to give a timeline or a calendar. Because even when these matters are sorted out by the judiciary today, assuming something happens and they're sorted out before the end of January, nothing stops any other Kenyan from still going back to the High Court and questioning the composition of the IEBC. So the IEBC Selection Committee. So probably it does exist that you'll have a litigation going on till April 2027. So it's important for the members of the National Assembly and Senate that in future, when they're coming up with these sensitive pieces of legislation, to insulate them from cartels and special interest groups. So that is, in my view, that is urgent. And I remember a judge of the Supreme Court raised that matter and said that we need to look at this thing. And in my view, failure to have an IEBC is a threat to our national security, because we have established that elections are very key in Kenya. And after every election, there's normally tension a few months to the election and a few months after the election on account of pronouncing the winner. That is why Justice Kriegler in his report indicated this IEBC needs to be constituted well in advance so that the commissioners as well as the secretariats, they inspire confidence in Kenyans. That in fact they've created predictable systems for unpredictable outcomes. Mm-hmm. But the lack of IEBC today, who does it benefit? It actually benefits the political class. Mm-hmm. There have been conversations that if you constitute IEBC today, a number of elected leaders can actually face recall, because there's a general mood that a good number of elected leaders are not delivering, so they may be recalled. So it's not extreme imagination to understand that some of these suits in the judiciary
very convenient for them.
Are actually sponsored there. Yes. The probability does exist that they're sponsored. Number two, there's a danger of mixing Kenyan politics with international politics. The reason why a good part of, the reason why there are conversations that Raila shouldn't be running for AUC is because of his political capital. Raila Odinga has demonstrated capacity and competence to be the AUC chairman. But there is a good part of the political class in Kenya that they know if Raila Odinga is not active in the Kenyan political space, then somebody with serious political capital or a key variable will be missing. So the people who don't want Raila Odinga to become the AUC chairman, it's got nothing to do with his capacity and competence to lead AUC. but it's about the local dynamics. And you raised the very fundamental issues, that if you're talking about a constitution, can you compare the Kenyan constitution with the one of Djibouti? Can you compare democracy in Kenya and Djibouti? Is there even a vibrant social media the way we have in Kenya, in Djibouti? So there are people who are really very disappointed that in the event Raila becomes the AUC chairman and he behaves with dignity and decorum as the office demands, then a certain vacuum will be created in Kenya and there's nobody with his political gravitas.
And you say
however, that does not stop Raila Odinga, especially right now before he becomes the chairman, because elections are next month, on pronouncing himself on critical issues in Kenya.
It's one thing to have a good constitution, it's another thing to actually adhere to that constitution. Right. We are already in defiance in as far as delimitation of boundaries is concerned. We are pushing, we are stretching this IEBC issue to the farthest yielding point we can get this to get to. Many question, because yes, as he said, it could be very convenient for politicians. One thing is that there's a whole generation that is disgruntled, the young generation, the Gen Zs, who are yet to register as voters. It is a key demographic, if at all it does get to register as voters for 2027. That could also be part of the reason why not many politicians are interested in having IEBC early enough. Don't you think that these issues in the judiciary are a bit too convenient for the political class?
Well, I think one thing I agree with this mass is that a lack of a properly constituted IEBC and functional in that manner is a matter of national interest. And there should be no judicial hang-ups or handicaps or hurdles that can prevent us from addressing an issue of national interest. I think it is about time as Kenyans we rise to the occasion of realizing that electoral injustice do not happen on the voting day. They start before the election. And the only way we can deal with these all issues of electoral injustice is by having the key player, who is the IEBC, the referee, ready to help myself and Jerry and Dismas get into a political discourse with the rest of Kenyans and vote, and finally have the will of the majority prevail and the desire of the minority expressed, and thereafter a total acceptance of the outcome. The unpredictability of an election needs to be predicted, that should we employ and engage in this conversation on this activity of voting in the leadership we want, we know this is how it's going to play out. We know these are the timelines. We know these are the functions and responsibilities of this department and of the IEBC. But the political class, especially the current political class we are having today, will not let that happen. One, there is a fear of recall. I agree with that. Two, they know Kenyans are determined to go to an election. Kenyans are determined even to seek a snap election before 2027. So if we have a functional IEBC, it's actually a disservice to them. But it is a greater violation of our constitution by this current government not to help the country have a properly constituted and functional IEBC. Further, I also agree, there are Kenyans who are suffering because they lack representation. Either the members passed on, unfortunately so. There are places we should be having by election, various offices, we have constituencies and some other areas in ward levels, but that is not happening. Why? Because of the failure of government. I also agree that some of the litigations we are seeing around the IEBC and the whole saga are sponsored just for the delayed effect that the government wants to continue enjoying. So this matter needs to be treated as a matter of national interest with utmost urgency. We need an IEBC in place. The founders of the Constitution, they were not lost for wisdom when they said they needed 3 years in advance to be properly funded, properly organized. This will help us overcome all these handshake, NADCO, broad-based government shenanigans we are exposed to after the election. Because people will be knowing this is how it's supposed to be, so it's going to be handled. Should you have electoral disputes, this is how you go. Do you need to go to the streets? All those factors need to be addressed. Further, the selection of the commissioners You know, I don't know why we lost the lesson from the dissenting voices of the Cherera and company. That was a wake-up call that as a country, we need to really work within the rule of law. And I think that is the greatest failure of this government. One of the things they are not able to do is to subscribe to the rule of law when it serves the interest of Kenyans. But when it serves their interest as a political class, they are very happy to come out and say, this is what we want done. We need an IEBC. There is no brain about that. And it needs to be treated with utmost urgency. Further, the issue of Raila Odinga not going for the AUC win, he is incompetent to hold that office. He has had a very good political journey. He has played, he's been a key player in fight for democracy and progressive electoral institutions, both in Kenya region and in Africa as well. But what Africa needs now is totally different than what he has to offer. He could be saying he's ready for Africa, he wants to be the lion that roars, but that's not what we are after. We need new infusion of new energy and new thinking. And I do not feel that he has that to offer for the continent. Lastly, you know, all regimes, when they want to stifle democracy and call for progress, either here in Africa, in Europe, or in Far East, the first thing they do is to take away human rights. One thing that we must have as a country is a progressive constitution being allowed to work. Because in Africa, I think we have one of the most progressive documents in terms of constitution. But you see, the government is very deliberate not to let it play out. And one thing we are being denied is registration of new voters, because there should be continuous registration of voters. That's the only way we get to determine the kind of leadership we have. So that is one thing we need to look into. Even as we talk about the whole 2027, there are a lot of things that needs to happen before.
And as you make your final comments, because we are about only 2.5 years to election time, there's the issue of boundaries review, the registration of voters, and even the IEBC itself, because what we're talking about is a selection panel. We've not even started recruiting commissioners. Now, is it possible to have all these things done and done properly? Or are we confidently or comfortably sitting back and staying in defiance of the Constitution? And what risk does that portend as you make your final comments? We only have like a minute each.
In my view, the Attorney General has got the unique responsibility as the advisor of the government. I may not be a lawyer, but I think she's got capacity as the Attorney General to move the Chief Justice and using whatever provisions that are available and indicate that this is an urgent matter and have some of these cases maybe consolidated or fast-tracked because of national interest, because of national security. Because if we don't do that, then there's a risk. We will not have these commissioners selected in the right time. There's a risk that people may not be registered to vote in a good time. There's a risk, therefore, that people will be disenfranchised. And a politician would say that this is my cause supporters. They've got IDs, but they've not been registered as voters. So that is something that we must address as a matter of urgency. And lawyers can go to the Kenyan Constitution, can go to the various provisions, and find a route where they can move the Chief Justice to do that. You know, that is within their domain, and in fact, that is why she's the government's legal advisor. And then on this other matter, you're talking about Raila Odinga, that I mean, one of the panelists has said that he may not be competent to lead African Union, that he may not have capacity, that that's not what we need. In fact, African Union decisions are made by heads of states and governments in Africa. So the only thing Mr. Raila Odinga would be doing is convening them and setting the agenda. President Museveni indicated when he was in Kenya a few days ago that when Raila Odinga is qualified for this role, the buck stops with African presidents. So if you are complaining about African Union incapacity to respond maybe to the demographic challenges, it's not about the leadership at the African Union. It's about the African heads of states and government, because they're the people of the arm and the knife.
Okay. Jerry?
I want to do my closing remarks by saying that it's time the Gen Z, the millennials, and every other generation that understands what a dictator can do to this nation comes out, and we strongly demand for IEBC, because we are looking at a situation whereby this regime has understood that we, the young people, and especially those who are just fresh from Form 4, those who it's going to be their first time to vote, don't have IDs. And I think this government would be very happy if those people did not vote, because those are the people that went to the streets. So mine is just to rally the Gen Z across the nation. We came out strongly in terms of finance bill, and I think it's time we think about coming out strongly and demand for IEBC, because we cannot allow this government make deliberate mistakes to ensure that our voice is not heard in 2027, and constitutionally we will be at a very big situation, because in one case, if this government comes back, we're going to say the IEBC was not constituted in time. If we throw it out, they're going to say they were thrown out by an IEBC that was not constituted in time. So I ask the Gen Z, the millennials, and every other person who feels that it's time that the Constitution is upheld properly, let us demand for IEBC so that we can get to exercise our duty. Because trust you me, if we demand for it, if they can impeach Gachagua 11 p.m. in the night, if they can give letters back to back from government 11 in the night, they can also give authorization late in the night for IEBC to be reconstituted.
Indimuli, just a point of clarification. Parliament has already passed the law on IEBC selection committee. The matter is stuck with the judiciary. So Parliament has already done its work. The President has already done its work. And as panelists, we must learn to place the buck where it stops. The IEBC selection committee challenge is not within the presidency. It's not within IEBC. It's within the judiciary. Because Kenyans have got the right to petition on any matter?
Well, when it is a matter of interest, it is all hands on deck, because even the parliament itself has the right to call upon any other person who is not really executing mandate on furtherance of the IEBC for formation and constitution. So we cannot really shift the blame and say it's that or the other. But finally, what I want to say is that justice delayed is justice denied. As Kenyans, we need to rise up to the occasion and know that the rule of law is the only defense we have against this regime.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Josephat Kamanya, political analyst, Njeri Kahiga, national youth leader, and Dismas Mukua, political risk analyst. Our panelists this morning on State of the Nation as we take a look at the big headlines. Of course, the issue of abductions and that statement by the CS for Public Service featuring on all the front pages. That is a big discussion that has also ballooned and crossed the border. It's also on the front pages of the dailies as a big headline in Tanzania. How embarrassing. Well, that is just a State of the Nation, today being the 15th of January, 2025. After the break, we change gears and we talk about toxic relationships. Have you been in one? Have you been branded toxic? Kama hujaitwa toxic, bado huja make it, right? So yes, that's a conversation that my colleague Anodida will be having with a huge panel and also with the Councillor Dr. Julius Kimani. Do stand by for that. My name is Freddie Ndimuli. Good morning.